about the festival that we want you to look at this as much more a festival than a competition, but it is a competition. So we want you to compete, and we want you to be up on top of it and feel the joy and the pressure and the disappointment of a competition, because that's a part of life. But we also want you to meet people you don't know, be collegial, be friendly, root for other people, be a part of a general learning experience that will take you into your mature adulthood. And it's what you make it. The feeling of this festival is very much based on the spirit that you come to this experience with. And we're here, we're resources. All of us, you'll see us around. And the band, we come with amounts of love and experience. We have all participated in competitions when we were in high school. Many of us have parents that were in the music and were educators. And one of us, Carlos Enriquez, was in the very first, essentially, Ellington. So we normally just start, I say a few little words, which I've said, and then we open it up for questions, because we want to get to things that we know you may want to know. You don't just have to ask questions to me. We all are available as a resource. It's more productive if you want to know about things that will help you in your experience here with your band. You want to know something about the rhythm section, how to play certain grooves, how to lead a section, kind of technical things. We're here, but we're willing to answer any type of question as long as it's something that could be printed in the paper or put on media without any problem. So let's start with the first brave person that will come up and ask a question, and then I'm sure other people will come on. That's right. Okay. You were looking at your phone, you see. I was looking at you, but you had your phone. Now, I like your tie. I like your whole vine. Blue was nice.
My question is, in what ways can I increase the seriousness and depth of my listening?
Ooh. Man, wow. That's a great start. I'm going to turn that over to one of our listening captains, probably. We got some people who, this is our band historian. He has a library full of knowledge, and when we have questions in the band, we generally ask him. Mr. Vincent Gardner is perfect to answer that.
Well, I guess my first thought on that question is that you have to listen with musicians' ears. We can't listen with non-musicians' ears, and listen with the ears that are tuned from all of your experiences and all the investment that you put in. So when you listen to whatever the music is, you shouldn't be listening superficially. You should be listening for things that relate to how well you desire to play, how well you desire to write, if that's one of your ambitions. You should be listening to intricate details of tone and articulation. I'm not sure what instrument you play, but
I play tenor saxophone.
Tenor saxophone, okay, so they do apply to that. So you should be listening to intimate details when you listen to great masters play of tone, articulation, breath control, support, all the things that you've heard about, but you can now hear a master exhibiting all of those things. So you should be listening with very detailed ears, and that's going to help to increase the depth of how much you're involved with what you listen to. You should always pick things out that you've never heard before. When you listen back to something, Sherman and I were just listening to So What the other day. We were in Charlotte, and somebody played So What for us, and we've heard So What a million times, probably everybody in there has, and at least I hope so. And we heard a wrong note that Cannonball or Coltrane played in So What for the first time three days ago, listening to it. Man, we never heard that before. They played a wrong note in the second half of the tune when they were going out, just one time. So you're always listening. You're always trying to increase the depth of how you listen, but you got to listen with those types of intentions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Yes, sir.
With the recent attention that's been brought to it on social media and other outlets, what is your opinion on jazz being labeled as Black American music?
Black American music? Okay, I've spoken on this many times, and I'm happy to speak on this. I don't believe in putting a race term that's inaccurate, like black or white or red or yellow, on music. Because of the prevalence of racism in our country as part of our identity, we look at everything as a color. Music is so porous And so many things influence our music. This music is American music. Now, it is from the perspective of the Afro-American, but I've never called our music black music because I don't want somebody else to tell me something. It's white music. The polarity in the way we look at things affects our understanding. But I'm going to say that we know now that we've discovered the DNA strain that race is a matter of climate, and the DNA tells us how we're all interrelated. But if you've lived in a climate of racism, and you live in that climate, and all of your experiences have been shaped by that racism, how can you undo your experiences to address the scientific facts of your humanity? Jazz deals with all of these issues, and it's very complicated. If you look around our room and you look at just from the standpoint of the race of who's in here, that speaks more to the resources in our country than it does to anything racial. But it's very important for us to address these issues as musicians and to be real, for us to heal ourselves and to get better. If we act like we don't see it or we don't talk about it, there's always going to be a problem. There are many musicians that have played jazz who have been great, not only of different races in America, but at this point all over the world. To reduce a music to a term of racism that applies to a country that holds those values so dear. I don't think that has a history. If I went, a guy called me, I'll just give you an example because this is a relatively complex but very simple question. Because on the one hand, I don't want to disrespect the Afro-American tradition because it is the wellspring and the source of where jazz comes from. However, what degree of black does a person have to be to become black? What degree of white does somebody have to be white? Well, if you're from the South, you grew up in segregation, it's clear. But at this point, let's go out of our culture and think of if you learn Beethoven's music and you say, well, listen to some white music, it's Beethoven's music. If you learn tango music, you say, well, listen to some white music. If you learn Brazilian music and it's more Ciro Santos, you say, this is black music. These terms become very, not just offensive, they're inaccurate. I always ask people a question, Americans a question. I say, what color do you think Iranians are? And they always say, oh, you know, dark. I say, those people are whiter than you. Well, why are we fighting them? That's the next thought, not the question. Why we, really? I didn't know that. These are very difficult but simple subjects. So for me personally, I don't refer to music in racial terms. There can be a nation attached to it, American. There can be Afro-American music in terms of the tradition of the blues, the tradition of songs but let's not forget, the root of Afro-American music is Anglo-Celtic music. The Africanization of music exists all across the diaspora. There's so much music all through the world. Middle Eastern music, music from Spain, everywhere, African diaspora music. Every time you hear a 6 rhythm and a 12 rhythm, it's African music. But in our obsession for race and to define things racially, we have to know well, exactly who invented this. The DNA told you. We come from Africa, so we're all Africans. So we can all call it just African music. There you go.
Hello, my name is Andrew Stein, and I'm a baritone saxophonist from Middleton High School. And obviously, Joe Temperley is one of my greatest role models. And so my question is, how do you think Joe Temperley's status as an immigrant to American culture affected his ability to play music that was rooted in an immigrant people?
Okay, I like that question. I'm going to turn this answer over to Marcus Printer. He said, how did Joe Temperley's status? And the reason I'm turning it over to him is because we're having a conversation about Joe Temperley years ago. I don't know if he even remembers it. He said, man, okay, we were talking. He said, man, there's something how Joe is not even from here. And he's playing our music with a level of seriousness that we're not playing it with. Do you remember that? Yeah, okay, he doesn't remember. So, you feel comfortable talking about it? Because Marcus really loved Joe with a certain type of intensity, as we all did.
Yeah, we all love Joe. I had the pleasure of writing a composition for him for a commission we did. And you know, I was trying to think of what to write. And I tried to write some melodies of my own. And then Joe's spirit came into, this is like a month after he died. He goes, "Print up. Just sing something and play it and pretend I'm soloing on it." So I wrote some chord changes out, and I imagined what he would play over the chord changes, and so this song was born from that. And I can't tell you too many stories about Joe, because some of them are, he was a character. Joe kept us laughing. He would tell limericks, which is, how do you describe a limerick? It's like a Scottish...
Something that we won't say now.
Exactly. But he was just soulful. I mean, he just loved our culture. He loved the culture of the United States. And we miss him very much. And his sound just says it all. So just listen to him, and your answer will be given to you just by his sound. That's all I can say about Joe.
Yeah. I want to make the point also with what Marcus was saying, that we love Joe Temperley from a personal standpoint. It's very deep. This music is very personal. I talked to Joe right before he passed away. I sat down with him on this couch. We talked for, 2 hours. And he was so sick. And then I got up to go to the door, and just him trying to get up out of his couch. Whew, man, it was so heavy just to look at him. And he got down in there, and he stood up. He walked over to me. He hugged me. I hugged him. And we looked at each other. And it's something in our music that's very deep, and it's very profound. It's intensely human, and it's not a joke. Joe Temperley gave his life to that. And he was so for real about it. It was in his sound and every note he played. And I was telling y'all that many of the roots of Afro-American music and of American music are Anglo-Celtic. They come from all over the world. Everything comes from African music. Joe Temperley understood that. And he embodied the music. Joe would call before we had some real part. He'd say, "Wynton, send me my part. I want to make sure that I'm ready. Don't tell anybody." Nice, I could tell everybody. Joe would practice and work and share it on his part. And you know, we loved him. And in speaking of Joe, his spirit is always with us. We talk about, Ryan and I used to joke about Joe's changes. We'd be playing a certain song and Joe would play some type of melodic phrase or something that would go through whatever the changes were. We say Joe's changes. And I want to also recognize Paul Netzella, who came in a very difficult position in the band. As a young person, plays with a tremendous amount of integrity and style and feeling, has his way of playing, and he's continued in that tradition. And he's continued with the spirit of Joe, embracing Joe, playing his own way, and always having the ultimate respect, reverence, without making that reverence and all that's necessary to be respectful overwhelm his own style and sound and ambitions. So I know we're going on long about that, but Joe Temperley was something. He was absolutely for real on so many levels. I wish I could get deeper than that, but we love this man. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Nate Ray. I played alto sax in the Mount Si High School Jazz 1, and I have a question about improvisation. I was going to ask what your opinion on scalar improvisation versus playing the changes and how that relates to horizontal and verticalness of your solo.
Ooh. Let's see, who could answer that? Who wants to answer that? Ted or Vic? Ted, you want to answer that? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think I heard everything you said. Improvisation is amazing. It's an amazing opportunity for us to really explore who we are in different ways. But just as a technical thing, scales, chords, you know, harmony, it's such a big part of our tools, of what we use to express something, to create something, to create melodies. Basically, if we remind ourselves that we're not just playing notes, that we're using the scales and the chords to create melodies, basically. If you listen to Coltrane, even the most complicated solos, you always come back to blues and melody in his playing. I kind of like to break it down in a couple of ways. There's a global way and there's a local way to approach it. Like, a global way is where you create melodies. We're talking about Joe's changes. It's kind of like where you almost ignore the chords, and default to playing melodies and phrases that are bigger and more global and take into account something broader than just the chords and the scales and the cadences and the implications of the cadences. But the local way is where we address the individual chords for what they are and all the implications they have, 5 to 1, 1 to 4, sharp 11, things like that, those kind of technical things. So really, basically, when you're practicing and you're working on this music, you should go back and forth between a more technical and harmonic approach of a local way of looking at it, looking at what the chords are, the function of the chords, why they're there, really analyze it, and then also forget about all that and just try to make melodies that fit over the top of everything, too. So if you practice both those things, you'll develop an instinct for having both a complicated and depth to your solos, but plus having melody and blues in it. That's how I would approach it. I hope I didn't hear all of your question, but I think that was a lot of it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. That's great. Understand all the perspectives. Like, I like his use of the word global too. Like that there's something beyond the technical aspect. It's a spiritual thing. And then also so that way you're not inept. Because you may have you may have a very great understanding of a global feeling, but you may be technically inept and not want to spend the time it takes, or you may be very focused on, but you may not want to hear. So, yes.
Hello. I was wondering how we as jazz musicians can continue to evolve jazz music without turning it into a different genre, and where do you determine the difference between an evolution of jazz music and the creation of a new type of music?
That's a good question, very advanced. Okay, this goes to a question of meaning. Now, what makes it difficult is that meaning is arbitrary. So there's some things that is not arbitrary, like you need to drink water. That's not arbitrary. But there are not many things like that. So let's say the first time you really disrespect your parents, you're not going to be struck by lightning the next day. You're going to wake up and do whatever, and if they tolerate it and are cool with it, you're going to go on living. The first time you don't do stuff you're not supposed to do, you're not going to die. Then you start to think, well, wow, okay, this really doesn't mean anything. This means this. That's like what goes on in our political system. It means one thing one day, the next day it means another whole thing, depending on who's defining it. If you look at 2 different news channels, you get 2 totally different newses. So you start to think, well, everything is arbitrary. Meaning is arbitrary. And the tragic thing and the great thing about it is. So you determine what your symbolism is. And if that symbolism is something that serves your group, your nation, and you personally, you're successful. And if that symbolism is not, you end up with a monarchy that has all kids that have defects because of interbreeding. The world has many examples of symbols that do not serve the people. In terms of jazz, the great part of your question was, how can we evolve our music while keeping it itself? That's a good question. You do that by identifying what are the fundamentals of this music. Now you have to realize another thing about jazz. It goes back to that racial question. What if I don't want you to be yourself? What if I would look at you and say, man, the problem with you is you're white? You'd be like, wow, that's a problem? Yeah, let me make about 4,000 movies to show you that it's a problem. And in each one of those images, I'm going to make sure that you're suppressed and a fool, and I'm going to be the hero. And you say, but wait a second, man, I can't get to be the hero sometimes. I say, and I tell you, no, man, you're not the hero. I like you, though. Come here, let me rub your head. Do you have a grill you can put in? What kind of stereotype can you be for me? Why? It starts from one thought. You're less than me. This music is for real, like Joe Temperley was for real, and it deals with real issues. We have an identity crisis in our country, and it affects all our younger people because it's real. We want to laugh it away and, yeah, oh, wow, yeah. But it's affecting people's lives. You all are young, you all are artists. Step into the meaning of our country, of of the most heroic of our achievements, of what does it mean to be who we are. See your oneness with other people and perceive things. Then you're gonna pull out of your pocket, instead of some dollar bills, you're gonna pull fire out of it. And boy, when you pull that fire out, you better be ready for what comes with it. Because everybody's not smiling when you do this. They say, ooh, I don't like him. We gotta open eyes. Our music has fundamentals. What are those fundamentals? Think of all the greatest records in the history of our music and ask yourself, what do all of these things have in common? That tells you what those fundamentals are. Address those fundamentals. And if you see deeply enough into those fundamentals, you start to see new things, new patterns, new ways. Or go away from all of those fundamentals and you can create another form of music. See, meaning is it's not a right or a wrong. I like to talk about 360-degree experience. I want you to just follow me about. I talked to one person, two people in a family. I talked to one, they say, man, my family life was so dysfunctional, I determined that when I left home, I would get a family, I would be faithful, I would not drink, or whatever the dysfunction was. I was gonna be perfect, and I'm sticking to this path. The other brother said, man, my family life was so dysfunctional, I couldn't wait to get out and be dysfunctional. They both came from the same family, 360 degrees. So experience is open, but it's not. You have to be able to hold in your mind two thoughts. It's like what democracy is. Yes, you have personal freedom. Like us in this band, everybody can play. People spend hours, years learning how to play. I sit next to a guy who can play any kind of thing on the trumpet. Most of the nights he's not even playing. And it's not 1 or 2 years, it's 20 years. Hey man, you want to play on this? Nah, man, I don't, let somebody else can play. Elliot might solo at the end of the night. We were talking, me and him yesterday. When he solos, a lot of times we play the whole gig and he starts playing and we say, oh yeah, him. He's playing all kind of stuff you never heard on his horn. But he sat there the whole night. What is the negotiation of me and us? We have to hold those two thoughts. Y'all are asking us some real serious questions, so I'm trying to get in there with you. But can you follow kind of what I'm saying? So the last thing I'm gonna leave you with is, when there's a tremendous investment in you not being yourself for the so-called security of the nation, you better defend being yourself and be ready for what it's gonna cost you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Ocampo. I'm a trumpet player that attends Dillard Center for the Arts. My question is towards you. What really influenced you to pursue jazz instead of pursuing classical music?
My daddy and all the musicians I knew. I love classical music too. I mean, I love the music. But I was raised by a jazz musician, and they were struggling. So I always saw them struggle, but I saw like they hug each other, the way they talk to each other. Him, Nat Paralat, there's a certain group of people. They were sophisticated, they knew about stuff, they were kind of hard-edged about it, they could play, but they were broke, but they could do all those things. So I was always kind of hanging around them, and I liked them. I loved my daddy. Of course, he was always so cool. My dad was one of the just coolest, not judgmental, mess with people. He was always just, yeah, man, he used to always say, leave people alone, man, it's hard enough out here. And just the way they would, like they see Dizzy, they would hug him, or they see, on and on and on. And many of us have a similar experience if we have it in our family. If not, we pick the music up some other way. You asked me, so I'm answering. Did that help? Yeah. I mean, I still love classical music. I don't have to choose against jazz, but jazz, I grew up in that tradition, so, and I love what I learned growing up. And I love the musicians that played it and the vibe of it. And I love it more. The older I get, the more I love it. The more in question it is, actually, the deeper my commitment to it is. And I believe in it more than I ever believed in it. And I believed in it when I was your age, but I believe in it now. I'm ready to go down with it. I'm happy about it. I love the music. The music is unbelievable. It's so great. I'll just keep talking about it, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Man. Yes, sir.
Hi. I suppose I'm wondering, when you're writing new music, how you incorporate like international, like folk or world sounds with the traditions of jazz without sounding like you're just mashing them together or contrived.
Chris is going to answer. He writes unbelievable arrangements of different styles of music. Whenever we have collaborations with different, he figures out something. A lot of us can do it, but he has a talent and a skill for that.
I remember the first time I was approached to write God's Trombones. It was a piece I did back in 2012. And I remember I was in Cuba, actually, when Wynton asked me to do it. This is 2010, like around October. So there's a lot of time that I had I know I had to, because I was familiar with it, but I really had to delve into what it was. So like you said, I wouldn't, make a caricature, if you will, of what it is that I was trying to do. So one thing that I've learned over the years of being in the orchestra, of just being a musician alone, is embrace culture. Embrace culture that you run into. There's one, you may not run into it ever again. That might be your only time you ever see a fiesta that lasts for hours and hours after a gig. Or going to a country and seeing one of the 7 wonders of the world, or just seeing something that you, first of all, never even imagined that you would be there, and then second of all, just taking it all in, just because that might be that one time you might see it again. So in making God's Trombones, I had to really, really study, and I read a lot and tried to get inside of what James Weldon Johnson was coming from. And luckily for me, it was pretty easy, because I grew up in that tradition. I grew up in church. I grew up listening to sermons. I grew up listening to different preachers and different deacons and different members of the clergy, and my dad is a gospel quartet singer. So I grew up around different groups, and they had different ways of singing, different ways of playing, different ways of this, that, and the third. So embrace whatever it is that you're trying to work on, and really try to find out things that make that different, make that culture, make that whatever it is that you're working on different from anything else. And then study rhythm all the time. Study rhythm, study time, study melodies and different things inside of that what you're trying to do, so you can make the best out of your version of what it is that you're trying to do. That make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, I want Carlos to, I'm sorry to cut off the applause. I want Carlos to answer that question also, because we did a fantastic record with Ruben Blades. He did all of the arrangements. We were on a plane one time. We were studying this book with all this flamenco music. We were studying it like crazy. Man, what about this rhythm? When we start playing, that book didn't help you. So Carlos said, you see, man, it's not books. So another thing, in addition to what Chris is talking about, if I have something I'm trying to work on, I don't understand, I call Carlos. Carlos, what is this? What is this rhythm? Can you write this cell out for me? And he'll say, man, I wrote that cell out for you 10 years ago. But he can give you a clue too, because he writes good arrangements of how different a diversity of cultures can come together.
So just tagging along with what Chris said, you do a lot of reading and you check out different cultures. In my case, for those who don't know, I grew up in a Afro-Latin community with music. I mean, to be honest with you, my first jazz gig was working with Wynton. So I was lucky. Before that, it was just primarily working with Tito Puente, Eddie Palmieri, Frank Rizzo, Francisco Rizzo, and some other cast, and then all the other pop stars in the Latin era with Mark Anthony and La India. I did a lot of research when I started writing for this band. Wynton gave me the opportunity to do some writing, and my first arrangement was Brahms' Lullaby. And at the time, I was checking out Chico Farrell. And for those who don't know who Chico Farrell is, check him out. He's one of the baddest orchestrator and arrangers in the world. He wrote for Machito and for his own group, and did many orchestrations for jazz bands. And I started studying the music, and what I did was, what you should do, is try to figure out and analyze the similarities in sound and in culture, right? And try to figure out why this works out. And then you figure out the history rhythmically, understand where this rhythms come from. At the end of the day, you're going to start understanding that we've all been together rhythmically from the start. And once you figure that out, it becomes easier when you start arranging and you start putting things together. So once I started doing that, and when I got to the point with doing the Ruben Blades project, that was fun because Ruben Blades' music was all over my house as a kid. I used to play Frisbee with his 45s and LPs with my brother. So, I mean, I knew his sound very well. The thing was, I could take that music and also hear American jazz music and understand what, like, Fletcher Henderson was doing and understand what cats were doing then and try to understand the similarities rhythmically. So, you know, you take music and you try to dissect it in different ways, like Wynton says, 360. You look at it in many different ways. Since I'm a bass player, I'm always analyzing the rhythmic part of it because the rhythm is unbelievable once you start understanding where it comes from. You know, I talk with Wynton about the habanero. Boom, 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 boom. This rhythm has been everywhere in the world, and everyone wants to claim that it's theirs. But at some point, you're going to find out that everybody plays it. And it's an airy style of music that we love, even to reggaeton that's being popularized now. So once you start understanding these little details and these cells, you could slowly start enhancing the way you write music. And you personalize it, but at the same time, you use the historical factors with it, which also, it makes it better, you know, because then you could actually know where things are coming from.
Hi, my name is Coleman Hovey. I play piano in the Foxborough High School Jazz Ensemble. My question is, as musicians, what do you think is the most powerful and effective way to use jazz music or music in general to impact our cultures and our society and bring everybody together?
I'm going to stand up because I can't see y'all with this in front of me. Your question's very big, but it's a good question. I believe every time you put your instrument to your mouth, or if you sing, anytime you sing, you are ambassador of the world. You are sharing something that is very special, a music that has transcended time, that has been a voice for people of many, many colors, and also has history. And when you play, you carry that. You're part of that history. You're continuing that. So you could kind of see yourself as an ambassador of that music. You're studying that music, you're continuing it, and you're sharing it with the world. And you're also sharing it with parts of the world that probably have never heard that music before. I was fortunate last year to go on a tour with the State Department. And we went to Africa. And some of the places in Africa that we went to, it was the first time they've ever probably even seen or heard a jazz concert. And what was really moving was, even though we didn't speak the same language, the music was so powerful that it touched the people and made them want to dance. It made them want to sing. It made them want to shout. It almost felt like we were at a game. And it was really cool to see how, even though we didn't speak the same language, the music itself connected us. And I would say, to answer your question, use the music. That's the key. It's going to connect us. It's going to connect you. It's going to open up the minds and ears of other people and be an inspiration to them, but also get them excited and energized about to learn more and share it with their friends. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. Mr. Marsalis, I read an interview that you gave where you quoted yourself as saying Thelonious Monk being your favorite musician or one of your favorite musicians. So I was just wondering if you could touch on maybe the connection between Duke and Monk. I mean, they have angular styles and similar approach to harmony, but I was just wondering maybe why you think those two musicians are really important just to jazz in general.
Wow, y'all are advanced a bit here. Okay, well, Monk loved Duke. Ben Riley's great drummer that played with Monk, he told me that Monk would not get, it was very hard to make Monk angry. But if you disrespected Duke, Monk will get angry. And then he said that Monk was big, man. You didn't want to make him mad. I think I like the global nature of the way they comp. Both comp like they are a band. Some piano players are comping in the middle register, little short, choppy rhythms that interfere with the snare drum. Monk is way at the top and the bottom of the piano. Monk said of Duke, he said, Duke knows all the chords. The other thing is the intelligence of their voicing. Monk's voicings, man, he just knows how to space chords to make the chords bend. And then I would say the overwhelming thing is the global intelligence. Just they're accounting for everything. They're listening to soloists, the time. That's what I think. I think I'm gonna ask Dan if he wants to say something about their playing, Monk and Duke. That's why I love them. But I mean, Dan knows their two styles better than I know.
I mean, I agree with everything that Wynton's saying. The only thing I can add is that they're both iconic musicians in their own right, and composers also. Their compositions were very important, and their piano styles are very unique from anyone that you'll ever hear. And the use of space, like what Wynton was saying, use of registers, and just the way they attack the piano, the clarity, and just the sounds they got out of the instrument itself, never be recreated again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ethan Salgado, and I play tenor saxophone in Dillard Center for the Arts. And my question is for you. What was the intention behind John Coltrane's post-1960s recordings such as Ascension and Transition, and why is it as important as, per se, Duke Ellington or Dizzy Gillespie's music?
Man, okay, you talking about post-1965 music. Who's good to answer that? It's interesting. I was listening to Interstellar Space last night. Don't ask me why. I put it on. I was just checking it out. I think that what I learned being at Jazz at Lincoln Center was that when some music is written out, a lot of people can play it. When music depends on a soloist, depending on the size of that soloist, if you don't have that soloist, you don't have music. Good example is if you ever try to play the arrangements Gil Evans did for Miles Davis. You can do it, but at a certain point, you're saying, where's Miles? You try to play Louis Armstrong's 1930s music. You're like, you need pops. Now, Duke Ellington, the New Orleans Suite, we can all play that, no problem. Some music is easy to play without the person who plays it. Some music is very difficult. That music is almost wholly improvised off of cells, and it's wholly about Coltrane's group and wholly about him. So it's very hard to present that. Who's going to play it? Who can play it? Even who understands it? Then who wants to listen to it? Because you don't have a lot of people who want to listen to something doesn't mean it should not be played. But if you have a hall of a certain size, you have to make certain decisions about what you're going to program. If you had an unlimited amount of capital to just program at your whim and you had no constraints, man, you could just program whatever you feel like doing. When you don't, when you start to have constraints, you have things you have to consider. For me, of Coltrane's music, that is not my favorite music. I still listen to it, I still return to it, and I still think that there are many lessons in it. And it's not, very little of that music have I ever programmed because I don't think it would be successful in a performance. But I could be wrong. We have programmed on that Coleman's music, we've called people to play their own music many times, and they've done excellent jobs with all different styles of music. That late Coltrane music is very, very difficult. And I put that in a category with any of the kind of iconic, it's kind of like the Miles Davis 1960s quintet music. It's great to listen to. You want to say something about it? Chris got it.
Well, I think that Coltrane in the 60s, I remember, we might have been on the road just recently on the tour. I remember somebody was telling the story about how Jackie McLean was in the club one night in 1954. And Coltrane was playing just out of his mind, and Jackie McLean said, "I heard the future." There's that in that one night, and like the next day, Coltrane went back to 1954 Coltrane at the time. If you know what that really was, he wasn't the Train that we know yet, but I think that in the 1960s, before then, he was always associated with somebody. It was Coltrane and Miles, it was Coltrane and Diz, it was Coltrane and Benny Golson, it was Coltrane and Thelonious Monk. He was always associated with someone, but during all of that time, he was still working on himself, and he was still getting better in his improvisation, and so much so that you would hear little nuggets of info like Kind of Blue. Like you hear all blues, you hear like a little snippet of the Coltrane changes inside of his play. And also when he was on tour with Miles, he would always play stuff that you would hear later on, like in 1962 or 1963. 1960. He was already working on that stuff. And so by the time 1962 came, he would already be working on things that were, coming up in the future. So I think that's why a lot of those recordings, like you said, Ascension and Transition, that's one of those ones. Yeah, that's one of those ones where you hear like both directions at once. Like you definitely hear what he was doing in the past and what was coming up in the future. So I think that's part of why his music in that instance is so important, is because it gave everyone else another avenue to go to as time presented itself.
And if you listen to that first track, if you listen to Mars on Interstellar Space, you're going to actually be able to hear the kind of do-be, do-bo-de, or de. He's running that kind of, his concept of how to play harmonies in the context of all that sound. And another thing about Coltrane in the late post-Ascension, because Transition is an important record. That great long-form suite on Transition. I don't know what the name of it is. Most of the times, somebody will listen to Transition, but they won't listen to that suite. If you listen to that long-form suite, then Coltrane, when Elvin and them started to kind of receive from the band and Rashid and them started to play, it was interesting, his concept of trying to put the two bands together, one that was playing more like a kind of chaos sound, and the other band kind of playing straight. If you think back to the question we had earlier about vertical and horizontal, I'm going to try to tell y'all something that's complicated to explain, but it's about polarity, and it exists. It exists in a male and female attitude. It exists in hot and cold, night and day, yin and yang. Shakespeare, anything you read of his great analogies is always, music is sweet thunder. Thunder is sweet? How is thunder going to be sweet? You can go down the line of artists. What the blues is, a major and a minor mode. Now, if you look at how we look at things, it's Democrat versus Republican, man versus woman, black versus white. That's the opposite of the conception he's working on. Horizontal versus vertical. But we live in a world that is horizontal and vertical. We live in a world in which all these things exist. They existed long before we started to fight over them. And the question is more of what Ted was saying. How do you see the integration? It goes to what Chris says. We're talking about how do you get together with other cultures? See how you're integrated with them. Now, instead of bringing a fist, your hand is like, now they might have a fist. You got to be like. It also exists in our culture most perniciously between age, old versus young. How you going to be verse yourself when you're old? Man, you got to be foolish. But all of this answers to what, because Coltrane was an honest seeker, like he was trying to find something. So when you listen to that late music, check out the level of relaxation in his playing. That's always been the most fascinating. Put that Interstellar Space on. And so far as us programming it, man, whew, I might give it to Chris, he might write it. Ted, we got certain, we try to work on the music all the time. We did a show on Ornette, which has nothing to do with how Train was playing. But he wrote one long arrangement that had Marcus playing a real long melody. What was that song of Ornette's? Of the song. What was the name of that song, Mark? We're getting near 60 years old. It's hard for us to. But he did a fantastic job of arranging it so that we could get the kind of feeling and the freedom. And with a large ensemble, you know, you got to always understand the more people you add, the more you better have some kind of organization. I was asking a question about classical music. They said, what about a symphony orchestra? Improvise. I said, you're going to have 70 people sit on the stage and just give them slashes? Okay, good luck. Tell me how it works out. Be ready. So, okay. We could go on and on, but I hope that helped to kind of answer some of what you were saying. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Murray, and I play the bass. And I was wondering, like, you hear all these guys, like the jazz legends that we look up to today and whose music we play, like, they play one note, and you hear, like, oh, that's Miles, or that's Bill Evans, or that's Bird. And I was wondering how you go about developing your own unique sound.
Right. Developing your own sound. I mean, a couple of things need to happen. First, you have to listen to a lot of other people play. You have to understand what's out there. And then you have to work on that. And then you'll find the elements of what you like within those things that you hear. And try to listen to a lot of different things. A lot of different players play. I was influenced by many different musicians over the years, playing gospel music, instrumental R&B, jazz, country, even rock, you know, influenced by all of that. And I find elements of everything that I liked. And I start putting it into my own playing. But I have to study first. I have to really listen, study and figure those things out. And there's going to be a point when, you know, you're going to be exploring, like, you know, I hope I can get my own sound. You may be 80 years old at that point because, you know, you can never really determine it. All in your mind, if you really are honest with yourself, you're still growing and growing. Someone else will tell you, man, you got your own sound. Me, I'm still on that journey. I can't say, okay, I got my own sound. All I know is that I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to be able to voice what I need.
Yeah. Okay. You have your own sound. I know Sherman's sound. I used to say back in the 80s, people would say they can't tell younger musicians. This is in the 80s. And I could tell Roy Hargrove's playing anyway. I heard him when he was 17, 16 or something. I could tell you he's playing. I could hear Kaiser play when he was young. I know it's him. Marcus Prentup, I know it's him. I could just hear individual sound immediately. No question, I was Prentup playing that. A lot of times your own sound and your ability to hear it is, can you hear? Do you listen to them play? I would be doing interviews. People, no, young people have their own sound. I say, Roy Hargrove has his own sound. I say, well, I don't recognize it. I say, but do you listen to him? That's why you don't recognize it. Your sound, you got to mean your sound. I mean this. And the more you mean that, the more you're going to have your own sound. I mean this. He definitely had his own sound, approach, everything. Sometimes Sherman, I was writing. I asked Sherman to send me some transcript of his writing, a saxophone section. Man, I started studying. I said, damn, man, how do you hear this? He said, man, I sing each part individually. We all arrange. We have different approaches. So you have your sound. You just got to be for real about it. Another good thing, I don't know if everybody agrees. If you disagree, then please give them the counter, is to tape record yourself and write down or think about the things you like about your playing, and then magnify those things. And the things you don't like, diminish those.
Right. That's the point I was just beginning to get to. Whenever you practice, you have to have an unrelenting discipline in listening to yourself. You have to be the doctor and the patient. So like, you're playing, you're the patient. And as you're playing and listening, and recording yourself is a good tool, because at first that's sort of hard to do. You're concentrating so much on what, you can't always hear everything that you're doing. But then you're the doctor. You hear some little, how come the way I'm playing this phrase, it's not really coming out like Wes Montgomery on the record, or whomever, or Paul Chambers? Maybe because, and you start to figure it out that way. So it's really being able to listen with an unrelenting discipline, it being honest. Bingo.
All right. All right. Okay. We're going to continue, but I want us to play a little music before. So I want to recognize a piece that we ran over yesterday. It's the student composition. And I just want to talk about just the kind of pride we have with our younger people writing music, coming up, playing. And when we see you all, the kind of desire that we want for your creativity and for the things, you're going to come up with a lot of things we would never think of. But we want you to know it's important to play Duke Ellington's music, and all these touchstones are important, but it's also important to use these things as springboards for your own creativity. Have your ideas, work on stuff, work on your craft. So we're going to get to all the questions. I don't want y'all, but I want to get the winner of the student arranging and composition contest to come up, Mr. Miles Lennox. He did so many good things in his arrangement. He did so many good things in his arrangement. I want you to listen for the two themes he introduces in the beginning, his interlude material, how he turns those themes around, the way he has background material, his use of colors of the orchestra, where the solo spaces are, the way he builds up a shout chorus near the end. It's just a lot of things that reflect the kind of intelligence and level of engagement and creativity and craftsmanship that we are very proud of seeing in you all, as we know we're going to hear so many great things from y'all over these next days. The point I want to make before Miles leads us in his composition, he probably say a little something about it, is just to know that this is all a cycle that we're in. It's a cycle. And we are honored. You know, as we talk about Joe, we love having y'all come up. And we love seeing him and what he's done and the type of work he puts in and his playing and all of that. And we love to celebrate it, and we like to talk good about y'all. So you can believe when we're sitting down and we're judging, if it's Jeff Hamilton and I generally sit together, it's one of the highlights of my year, is just the cracks that he's so funny when he's talking. But we're always speaking with love, like we're talking about people in our family. And when we start to argue about people's playing, it's always with love and respect for what you have to go through to be here. So Miles is going to introduce his tune, and then we'll play it. You know, so to give you an example of what happens, I'm just to say the things that happen on the bandstand. So I'm talking, I'm looking around, I have my contact lenses in which are to read music, so I can't really see y'all. I'm looking out there. So when you can't see people, you don't know how they're reacting to what you're saying. I'm sitting down, we're talking, and I'm looking at the set list because we played 2 or 3 songs, and I'm looking at Chris, and Chris is pointing out tunes. He has his music, and I said, what should we play? And Chris has already crossed off the things that we've played, which I don't know what all of them are. So he's making it much easier for me to know what it is. So he points at his page, and I look at it, and I say, I don't know. And then Carlos draws an arrow on his page to open windows. So I looked over at that arrow and opened windows. I said, Jay, and I looked at him, and he said. So we knew we were going to play it. And also, Chris said, hey, Carla is here, so we have to do we're going to do a vocal number also. But the kind of collegiality of all of what we're doing. And then I forgot to name James as a soloist, so when I looked at Victor, he went. Okay, and all of that is a part of what our music is. Notice how everybody came down when Miles started to play the piano solo. We started trying to find it, how the brass section is trying to find Ryan. This is the 3rd time we've actually gone over this song. The different adjustments that we make. One of the things I told Miles when he was conducting us, Miles, we're going to get a lot better each time we play it. So when you're rehearsing, you don't have to over-rehearse us because people want to play the music and they want to do a great job. And he'll notice all the adjustments he made, we were on top of doing those things because we want to do it. And that's another part, that's an important part of a democracy. You have to want other people to have something to be in this system. If you want everything for yourself, it's not going to work. Okay, where were we? Which side were we on? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Megan Rold, and I play alto saxophone in Sunbury High School's Jazz 1. My question is, what have you learned from your struggles, and how have they shaped who you are today?
Okay, what have you learned from your
Struggles.
From your struggles? When you get to our age, we don't have enough time to I have to find one of our younger members to discuss that. What have you learned from your struggles? And Tatum, you want to? Okay, this is a member, someone who participated in EE in 1999. I remember at least that one year. He might have been in others because there was some great trumpet playing went on that year, and he was one of them. It renewed my whole faith and hope just in playing, from the strength of his playing. He's up here with us now, Mr. Tatum Greenblatt.
Hey, Megan. I'm actually wearing my badge from 1999. I just moved. Talk about a struggle. Moving is a struggle. But I found my badge from 20 years ago, and it reminded me how old I am, so that's great. You know, I think the thing that, like, everything that you can deal with in life can be a struggle or an opportunity to learn from it. Personally, I have a 1-year-old kid. That's a struggle a lot of ways. It's even more of a struggle for my wife, just because he's 1 and he wants her all the time, you know? That's a struggle. But it's also a beautiful opportunity to learn about everything else in my life from a whole new perspective. Being in this section is a struggle. Having to sit next to this cat is a struggle for your own sense of self-worth sometimes, you know? But it's an opportunity to learn, you know? And I think that as, you know, we can't help but age, and the older that we get, the more that we either look at, am I gonna look, the struggles are gonna present themselves no matter what you do. You have no control over that, whether it's a math test or a solo on Isfahan or whatever, you know? The thing you can control is your reaction to it, right? And I can say that the thing that I admire in the people that I admire is the way that they react to those struggles tends to be similar, which is looking for ways to learn from those struggles and looking for ways to embetter themselves somehow. You know, I remember actually getting a chance to practice at Winton's apartment when you were getting over your lip surgery like a while back. Seeing this gentleman go through that struggle was one of the most important experiences of my life and most teaching moments of my life, to see him come back from something where he had to, 3 months off from the horn, he was starting back from zero. I didn't know how to practice until I saw that reaction to a challenge. That taught me more about practicing the trumpet, about learning music, than anything else I had ever dealt with. And I got to have both Scott Brown and Clarence Acox as band directors in my life. But seeing him, you know, I mean, but I saw one of my heroes struggling at a fundamental level, and the way that he was dealing with it made me realize, oh, that's how you deal with a Clark exercise. You know, and at that point I've been playing trumpet 20 years, and it was like, that was day one. How did he deal with that challenge? And I think that if you look at the people that you admire and you see how they respond to struggle, if they're looking for, every one of them is going to look for, what can I learn from this? How can I make myself better through this challenge? And I think if you approach life that way, you're going to be on the more advantageous end of those struggles more often than not. You know, sometimes you can't do anything about it. Math tests are math tests, you know. But in general, if you're trying to get better from those challenges, you're going to find yourself being a better person as you get older. And that's about all you can do, really. You know? So. Yeah.
Right. You know, to go with what Tatum said, sometimes you don't come back from stuff. Like what we played for years, I was sitting next to Ryan, and he understood how much I was struggling, so he would hear like how I was struggling with my parts. And that was 4 or 5 years of really struggling. And sometimes he would look at me like, man, you all right? I'd be like, and I was just telling him the other day, it was maybe last week or something. Sometimes if we have a real hard show, I'll start playing some of his parts. I said, man, I want you to notice how every time I play a lead part, I'm going to miss something. And I went years, I was very accurate on my horn. I was proud of my accuracy. But I said, you'll notice when I get above G's, A's, B flats, it's very hard for me to play a passage and not miss at least one note. It's gonna happen somewhere because my set is just not the same as it was. It's just not. And he said, he started to think about it. He said, yeah. But, you know, sometimes you just have a struggle, and we all have things. I was saying, used to think Clark Terry and them didn't want to play with us when I would ask him, hey, can you do this gig or can you play with us? He'd say, well, I need my music blown up. So we would blow the music up. And then eventually he said, no, I don't want to do it. And I thought, he just doesn't want to play with us. But now that I'm dealing with my own eyes, no, he was talking about, man, I can't see this music. And when you're younger, you don't understand that these things are going to happen to you. And what is it? It's something you don't know in terms of your own personal health, not to mention personal tragedies that are going to hit you or that have hit you. Life is a struggle. At any time, we have members that are dealing with all kinds of things. Death of a loved one, death of a child, personal disappointments, unbelievable pain. It's what life is. And to go with what Tatum was saying, we have a saying, whenever we miss a part, you missed that part, let's go. This is where we're going. But you know, you're not going to escape this. You got to embrace that razor edge because that's what life has in store for you, and there's a certain beauty to it, yes. There's something over there? I love that. Citizenship, you see? Just look at it. Yes.
So as you guys have advanced in your musical careers, how or what did you do to associate yourself with the people to help cultivate your career to be at the point where you are today?
There was a great Los Angeles record producer named Bones Howe, and he said, you never say no to a gig until you're too busy to say yes. That's the short answer. You can learn from any kind of job. When I first came to town, they had a lot of companies would hire Dixieland bands, Dixieland, quote, traditional. But that's where I got to learn all those great tunes that Lewis played and all those guys. And, you know, a great gig, you get to play some good tunes with some good musicians, you learn. So play anything and everything you can. That's the simple answer, I guess, for me.
What you should do is put yourself in the situation you want to be in. So, quick story. When I was attending high school, I had a friend named Stephen O'Kendall who was a trumpet player. And Stephen said, hey, I just met Wynton, and he's inviting me to his rehearsals. So I'm like, all right, let's go hang out. So I remember going to the first rehearsal I went to. I think they were doing something with Alvin Ailey. And I hung out, and I was like, man, this is hip. I like this, right? So what I started doing, which I don't recommend, I started cutting class and coming to rehearsals and hanging with Wynton. But check this out. So when I first went to that rehearsal, I wanted to be in that band. When I first met Reginald Ville and Rodney Whitaker, I was like, I want to do this. I was already playing with Eddie Palmieri and Tito Puente, so I would see some of the septet on double bills in jazz festivals. But I knew when I was in high school, I said, well, they're right across the street, so I'm going to go hang and just check out the music. And what would happen is eventually Rodney Whitaker had to go to the bathroom or something, and I would be like, I'll just pick up the bass and play the next, 5 minutes till he got back. And then they would realize, man, this kid is playing the part. And then I would just hang, and then, something leads to another, and then, he can't make the gig. Hey, you want to do it? Bingo. I'm already in. But you got to put yourself, in that situation,
He's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. But what he's not saying is he could play. I remember the first time I heard him play, I said, man, this guy is in the Afro-Latin tradition, plays with that kind of, played with this kind of four. And another thing, how much he brought to the band and to all of our understanding of music and for respect for different styles of music. Like how much he's taught me personally about all the styles of Afro-Latin music, which I love and always loved and respected because people thought I was Puerto Rican when I first came to New York. And I played gigs and I never said a word because I didn't want to expose myself. My Afro, I could kind of pass. I'd be, sí, gracias. And this is true, I'm not, But when he came to hang with the band, he was a part of it. So much so that now, all these years later, okay, you gotta imagine, we play with each other all the time. It's been years of it. Our sound man, I don't know if David Robinson is here. Okay, there he is. We finished a tour. He's been our sound man since 1980, what? 1989. We're just on a tour. We're playing every night. We're playing in Australia. We're playing in... He looks at me and he goes, man, do you hear all the bass that Carlos is playing? Every night this man is coming to swing. Ted and I are talking. And Ted goes, man, Carlos is playing so good. And it's just, we work with each other all the time. And we have our little spats and our things that we don't, but in terms of the depth of the man's professionalism and his seriousness and the love and respect we have. And for me, he fit in with us, but he gave me another whole way of understanding music. I had some music, we were working with an African group from Ghana. I wrote some music all on the wrong side of the beat on the end of two. So I had just given up on playing it. I sat down with Carlos one day. He was still a kid at that time. I said, man, listen to this, man. Why is this music so sad that I wrote? He said, well, it's all written on the wrong beat. And if you just go from there to all the times we've talked and the seriousness he has, I'm just saying it because he's talking about the music. He will call me at night before a concert. Hey, Papa, we're not ready for this. Or I don't know about the set list you just gave us. Or I think we should concentrate on this. But he has that type of seriousness and dedication to playing, and that affects the ensemble. And we could go from chair to chair. When we have that, you start to have a band full of people who have that kind of seriousness about what each other is doing. Then you start to get to that kind of feeling. So the people you need to know are people who know what you want to know. And you have to always distinguish, it's a point I make, that in my entire career playing music, I was never in a position where people who were making music products ever asked me to do more. Ever. It was always less. Can you write shorter? Can you not be serious? Can you come up with something that's not with trumpet on it? Can you figure out how to not be yourself? I used to go to TV shows in the 1980s and 90s when we were still playing on TV, and they would say, well, do you have a singer? Can you play something slow? Or can you play something fast? Because that might, what they're thinking is if you play something slow, it might be sweet. If you play something fast, it might be over quick. It was always a question. And my answer would then become, we could just stand there and not play at all if you want us to. We're here. So understand that when you're serious about something, and it's not something that everyone is serious about, it's not going to be like in a movie where everybody smiles at the end. You're going to be like fighting for that seriousness all the time. And if not, you got to put that mask on, pull the grill out. Here we go. Start shuffling, because that's what it's about. Okay, it's a good question.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Shinama McCoy. I play trombone. As a trombonist, how would you go from being a good trombonist to being a great musician?
Carlos said play bass.
Well, I'll just say that, you know, being a great musician is being a great musician is being a great musician on any instrument. You know, it all comes to the same amount of seriousness and dedication and study and desire to want to be great, and that comes out on whatever instrument you play. But it's the same basis of desire and determination and all of that. So if you have the desire, you know, to be the best on your instrument, if you're listening to the greatest sounds, the greatest trombone tones that there are, and you're listening very critically and trying to take things and fill in gaps in your own musicality and your own playing through listening to the masters and listening to people play live and people that you admire, if you're doing all of that, then that showcases that desire. That shows that that's there. All of that is part of it, and it gives you momentum. Man, I've worked on this for so long, and now I'm finally starting to get it. You know, it starts to feel like that. I remember when I couldn't do this, and now I've worked on it methodically, and now I'm starting to kind of get it now. It gives you pride and momentum in what you're doing, and it makes you want to get even better at it. So you have to go about, I think it comes from that. I think that your preparation and your desire and all of that, it feeds yourself, and it makes you become the better musician that you want to be. And that comes out in whatever, it's the same process for everyone, and I think that comes out in whatever instrument you play.
Okay, great. Good question.
Thank you.
Yes. Carla, would you like to say something to our singers? Or?
I did.
singers in the house? Yeah. Okay, I did want to just talk. I especially like doing this essentially Ellington because by far my favorite composer. I think one of the challenges listening to, especially a lot of vocalists today, is some of the artistic freedom a lot of people are taking in the melody. And Ellington and Strayhorn too, for that matter, wrote so precisely. So, you know, every note was crafted. This music is way older than everybody on this stage. And it's lasted this long and been inspiring for all of these years for a reason. So it's really important to honor, and not just Ellington, but, you know, the American Songbook. It's really important to honor the melody that the composer wrote. It's beautiful when you bring your own thing to the music, but you gotta learn the original melody first. I like to say, learn blue and red before you get to purple. That's the simpler way to put that. Also, I would like to, some of this music has really mature themes, and maybe someone 17, 18 doesn't necessarily relate to it as it is written now. It's really important, after you've learned the melody and you've learned the words, sit down with the lyric for a few minutes. Sit down and literally mull over what this whole thing means, not just the title, but the whole thing. And it should help you with your interpretation. How you planning to tell this story? And also, connect with the players. Even though everybody up here has a different function, the rhythm section has their function, the vocalist obviously with lyrics has a function as well. But the singer is not in a bubble. I'm singing, but I'm also listening to them at the same time. And sometimes I'm consciously or unconsciously picking up some things that are informing the way I deliver the music to the audience. So that's my big news.
Thank you. Thank you.
Another question?
Any singers, anybody have a question for Carla, a singer? Yes.
Hi, my name is Mia Jativa, and I just want to know how exactly do you really present yourself and what you want to give to the audience, you know, like stage presence-wise?
Oh, stage presence-wise.
Right.
Well, I think it's important that everyone develops their own stage presence. When I was really young, well, when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be Nancy Wilson. I had like a pink see-through hairbrush, and I would, you know, I'd stand there and do what I thought she was, you know. Then a few years later, when I went through a big Sarah Vaughan stage, I would always see her in a gown. Well, that turns out that's not who I am. I think your personal personality and the music that you present will, the more you do this, you'll find your comfort level. And literally, it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you get your sea legs, so to speak, and you'll find your place. You will find your own place there. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, we're going to very quickly answer everybody's question, and we're going to play Cottontail, and then we're going to wrap it up. Cottontail is 3 minutes and 33 seconds long. Okay, so would you excuse us, but we're going to get right to our answers. We're over here. Yes.
Hello, Mr. Marsalis.
Yes,
I
sir.
wanted to ask you about your experience with the flamenco guitar player Paco de Lucia. I'm generally like new to jazz, and I'm trying to get into it, and so far I've loved every part of it. I wanted to ask your experience with him and the combination between like cultures and how you can relate jazz to flamenco. How. Yeah,
Well, I loved him. So he was a shaman too. So he understood. One of his sentences I always remember. He said, "We're at a dinner with everybody. You know, it's always a lot of people and family around." He said, "The soul." He said, "The mind The mind cries for innovation, but the soul yearns for tradition. So there we go again with those opposites. Both. And he was both. I will tell you a question I asked him once. I said, man, what you think my chance of ever really playing good on flamenco? He said, define good. He said, I mean, are you going to play something somebody wants to learn? He said, what you think my chances are of playing like a blues guitar player? I said, man, that's, you know. He said, this is hard, even for me. So I think that there's a common ground in terms of rhythm and sensibility, but it's very difficult to be on a certain level. And he was always talking about us coming here and putting together, you remember that big thing he wanted to put together with gospel singers? He talked about when he first came to the United States in the 60s, we were going to put together a big show with gospel singers and flamenco and Afro-Latin music and everything. Sherman actually went. Didn't you go play with Paco? You want to tell him a little something? I know we're supposed to be being brief, but Paco called and said, man, can I call Sherman to do a gig? So,
well, he was something else. You know, what I loved about him, he was inclusive. You know, he's like, okay, I love your spirit, so I want to play with you. It didn't matter what style of music that you normally play. You come in, you fit in. We didn't talk about the music. He said, I'm just going to play this tune. You come in and fit in. This is a space for you to play your thing. He was warm, soulful, but quiet. Didn't have much to say. Just, you sit around, you sit next to him, you smile, you kind of feel the vibe. When I got on the stage, it was just like I was part of a family. He didn't have to say much, he just played. And afterwards, everybody hugged each other and said, hey man, it's great, you know, being around each other. It was a great experience.
Yeah, yes, you know. That's right. It's like family when we all get together, man. Piranha, playing cajon, it's soulful. Just like being you in New Orleans somewhere. Just, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
My question is about after that part of your career, your musical career, where you decide, I'll be a performer, educator, director, or whatever you decide to be. What do you think is the thing or the drive you get when you come and do what you like to do for music? Like, this is who I am, who we are, this is what we do. Like, what is that in your career?
You know, I don't look at it as a career, right? It's a way of life for me. My daddy did it, and I love it. And I know for most of us, we work so hard, we practice, we study. I'm so driven to do it. I'm more fired up now than I ever was. And I was fired up as a kid. I remember Victor coming to my house. I was trying to learn countdown when I was 15 on the C trumpet. Check this out, Vic. We still up here. We went to kindergarten together. We up here right now. So I don't look at it as a career. You know, it's just not. It's a way of life. And over time, you do stuff the same way. I once asked the great Sweet Edison, how did he get his playing to where when he just picked up his trumpet, it would take me 5 courses to play one I did, it was good. He started off playing like that. I said, man, how do you play like this where you just pick your own up? He said, there ain't but one way to play, baby boy. There ain't but one way to play. And I just feel like for me, it's a blessing to talk to you. It's a blessing to have young people come here in our hall. We built this hall. We used to walk around here, nothing was here. To work with the people I've worked with in my organization, that people who are not musicians will come around the idea of our music, of American music, of international music. That we're sitting up in here now with Carlos, all of us. It's a phenomena. Duke Ellington's music is being played. All the original members are dead. They played in our orchestra, that were members of Duke Ellington's orchestra. We still up here playing it, and y'all are up here. And one day we're not going to be here. And we hope that we give you enough spirit and feeling about this that you keep it going without watering it down and just disrespecting it. So for me, man, I'm so blessed and I'm so dedicated. Like, what can I say about it? I am dedicated. And I can speak for, we're on the tour. Everybody got their computers out writing arrangements and stuff, and we talking about music and we calling each other, and we're for real about it. And once you put together 40-something years of it, that's basically what you are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I'd like to add one thing to that. Because it's funny, he referenced that. I mean, prior to that day, we were both playing in different elementary band orchestras, all state orchestras, playing in the classical music tradition and all of that. And I played in my high school jazz band. But that day was the first time I heard John Coltrane. And I do remember that day when he took out the C trumpet and said, check this out. And I do remember that day, how that experience with him impacted me to be where I'm at today. So the point is, you never know how you're going to impact the person sitting to your left or right, or someone you're going to interact with today or a year from today. But you will have that experience.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, sir.
First of all, I'm like astounded to be here. It's nice to see you guys, and I'm inspired. My question, my name's Chris Face, and I go to Tarpon Springs High School, and my question kind of goes hand in hand with that. So as jazz is broad and can assimilate into like many sub-like genres, how do you channel your individual path as an individual in the field, meaning as like a performer versus educator versus like outreach? Because it seems like in your organization, it's brought very well. And just, I guess, how did you find your place and your path to push you forward?
Well, it depends on what you love, and you don't necessarily push it forward. You're going in a circle. It's a cycle. You think of everything as a cycle. You're born, you're going to live, and guess what's going to happen at the end? And now you're a certain age, you and all your friends talk about one thing. You know when you get to my age, what you're talking about? Somebody has a grandkid, somebody's parents dying, somebody has dementia, somebody losing their crib. Like you get to a certain age, you start to realize, hey, I'm getting older with all these older people. Now, when you're young, when I met Victor, was I thinking about that? Man, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about, man, let's play Countdown, let's go to the gig and play with our funk band. We're all a part of that. I could talk to Ryan Kaiser. He's from Iowa. I'm from Louisiana. And he'll tell me about going to gigs throughout that state with his father. His father was teaching jazz. His father had a series. So we've been sitting next to each other for 20-something years, 30. I don't even know how many years it is. It's a long time. So, you know, what you're drawn to is what you like doing. I like doing all of it. I saw my daddy do it. I like to teach. I'm not necessarily the best teacher, but I like to do it. And we all teach. Sometimes we teach together. I say, well, Carlos knows this, or Victor knows that, or Chris. Victor probably has more experience than the rest of us in terms of teaching. So we rely on him to do this, but different of us teach and know different things. So when you get the verses out of your mind, if you can just think about how can I get rid of verses, take that verses out. And instead of saying verses, say with. What is it for me to teach somebody? Nothing. I just say, hey, man, check this out. Look at this exercise. We believe in trying to be natural. Like Victor called me a couple of nights ago with a kid. I was just, look, we just try to be natural about what you're doing. It's not about bossing you or, like, what was the movie Whiplash, where somebody's berating people and all of that? Man, you can't. That's not going. That's counterproductive. As you get older, you really understand it. When you're younger, you may not understand. When you get older, you start. Sherman is laughing. You know, when I was younger, I was rough. As I got older, you understand? It's not verses. So you teach, you play, you advocate, you talk about things you love. It's like I go in the kitchen and you like to make a certain type of dish. And you say, man, you ever check this out? Man, look at this. Or when I was growing up, it'd be the new dance tune. Everybody be in the room. Man, you got to listen to Stevie's new record. Man, listen right here, listen right there. People are enthusiastic about it. Think if we could be about that, our political process and things of a certain type of value that's not like eating candy, then you start to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, thank you. Yep. And I want you also to check out the way our orchestra is playing. It's the middle of the day for us. They're sitting up. I want you to check out the attention to detail. Just in playing arrangements, we play once or twice. For years, we've been doing this. I told the orchestra yesterday, and I'm standing in the front trying to be critical and find things to say. But a couple of arrangements we played so well, that's years of us working on it and being serious. All I could say was, yeah, you know, okay, let's go to the next tune. And it's that dedication and passion, and it feels good. You don't have to always have a video game in your hand or a device to have a good time. You know, you can have a good time with people, and that's the thing. So, you know what I'm saying? No verses. Yes?
Thank you.
My name is Tate Satterley. I play tenor trombone for Mount Si, and my question for anyone in the band is that clearly everyone here loves music. That should be a given. And so I was wondering have you all ever come to a personal crossroads of sorts where you have to ask yourself, why am I playing music? Why do I want to be here? And then what did you anchor yourself in to keep yourself through that time where you were confused and in turmoil to get to where you are now?
Yeah. Hey, what's up? I've been through that a couple times in my life where I've come close to quitting. Gone through some very difficult personal times, lost the passion for playing for whatever reason. And the thing that always brings me back to playing is actually through teaching and working with students. When I work with you guys, when I work with students around the world, around the country, around the world, I start to see mirrors of myself, and you guys remind me why I started playing in the first place. You know, so it's through teaching for myself that I'm brought back to the reason I started to play in the first place. Somebody mentioned about going through struggles before. Every one of us goes through struggles, and we could cite them, you know, but each one of us has, and through those struggles, if we find the positivity in the struggle, we learn from it and turn it into a lesson, because each one of us has gotten through those struggles and learned from it and grown from it. And don't let those bring you down. Let them bring you back to the joy of playing that we all started with, you know. And I've gone through times when I was just playing commercial music and really didn't have any love for what I was doing. But it was through students and teaching that brought me back to the place where it reminded me why I started to play in the first place. It's fun. It makes a difference in people's lives to play for them and to teach. You know, when we teach music, it's not just teaching somebody how to play an instrument, it's teaching them awareness and raising their awareness of people around them, and it's improving us as people through learning this instrument. It's a profound discipline, you know, and it takes us to another level as a person. We grow as people. And it's through that process that, you know, I've been reminded time and time again why I started playing. It's fun, first and foremost, and it makes a difference in the world. We want to make a difference, a positive difference, and that's really what it's about for me.
Yep, that's great. Okay, thank you for your question. Okay, we're going to play Cottontail. And then we're going to, I'm going to reiterate again the thanks that we have and the congratulations to everybody. And to just before we play it, to add one thing to what Kenny was saying, he's talking about teaching, but another thing that all of us do is the importance of listening. Me and Ryan got together one night on the road, we just listened to KD. I said, man, play your favorite KD. He was putting it on. Vincent, Sherman, Dan, I call them sometimes, man, what are you checking out? What should we check out? Carlos, give me some stuff to check out. Okay? And I had to come up with a list of the best 50 things in jazz. And one morning I was on a train coming from North Carolina. I only listened to stuff that I considered to be the best. And it was like taking a bath. I got to one of what's the greatest example of just flat-footed people could improvise and play. So I put on Louis Armstrong playing second cornet to King Oliver. I just listened to it. I just listened to Louis Armstrong's part and tried to isolate it. Like, damn, this guy was 21 playing with this kind of sophistication and drive. Then I put on a record of Stan Getz' Focus. The first thing, they just gave him string parts and said, play on this. And listen to just how inventive all that improvisation was. It's unbelievable playing, just improvising. So I think that when I got finished with that train ride, it was like 5 or 6 hours or something. It was like I had taken a bath for 6 hours. I was so clean from hearing all those great musicians across time, all those different styles. So remember, as musicians, the greatest legacy we have is our ability to listen to music. One thing I thank my father all the time is my ability to actually hear classical music and not wish it was something else. You know, it is very important to understand. You can listen to a Shostakovich symphony and say, damn, Shostakovich. Whew. Last night, after I was listening to Interstellar Space, I put on the first movement of Bartok, music for string percussion and celeste, and listened to that fugue he wrote, 5-voice fugue. Whew. I was just shaking my head like I was back in the 11th grade. It's greater than it was then. So the more you connect with things with those type of values, they don't grow old, and they also don't make you feel nostalgic. I didn't listen to that music for string percussion. She likes to say, I remember when I was in the 11th grade. I said, man, I missed a whole lot of this when I was in the 11th grade. So we want to thank y'all, congratulate you, tell you, flow around this hall and make it like it's your home. We built it for people to come in and be a part of it. Make yourself be a part of this legacy and this tradition, and make the tradition be what you want it to be. Meet people in the other bands. You're going to meet some people you'll know your entire life. Meet them. Be collegial with them. And when you get up on this stage, play your little heart out. It's a pleasure. It's going to be an honor for us to listen to you and to serve this great music. And we hope you enjoy your time here. And when we finish playing Cottontail, we're just going to get up and we're not going to go through a lot of ceremony. We already have had y'all for a long time. We hope you enjoy this Cottontail Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra.